minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, you're now tapped in. It's already starting out there with the coolest reptile podcast in the world, Trap Talk Reptile Network. It's your girl, Krista, and we are off to the second episode of the Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast. How you guys doing? Here we go. You guys miss me? I had some people DM me, be like, where were you at last week? And I had a person, but she canceled last minute, unfortunately, due to family stuff. We kind of decided just to kind of take it slow a little bit. But after this week, I'm going to hit the ground running. Have an episode every single Sunday night. I'm really excited about the lineup, and especially with our very first guest. We're going to have Caila from Joob the Snake and Friends. I can already tell it's going to be a fantastic conversation. We've been talking a little bit over the weekend, so I hope you guys are excited. She's more, I would say, in the middle as far as her views on the pet keeper side and the breeder side. So we're going to talk about mainly those controversial topics. So she has a huge following on Instagram. If you haven't already given her a follow, do so. If you are new, tapping in, not subscribed, please subscribe to the Trap Talk Reptile Network. Like, comment, hit the little bell so you get notified. We are now 7 days a week bringing to you content from all across the reptile world, as far as green tree pythons and monitors, and we have new breeder on the block on Mondays, which is my personal favorite, but no other reptile network is doing that. So if you guys want to stay up to snuff, so to speak, on what's going on in the reptile industry, like and subscribe. So with that, I'm going to shout out with some sponsors. If I can do that real quick. I'll say you guys say hello in the chat, really to help too. We got Focus Cube Habitats, looking for really modern reptile housing solutions. If you're interested in getting enclosure, really look into getting one from these guys. They are top of the line, really plug and play. Even Caila, I shall go into, is working with these guys on housing her own animals. If you've seen MJ on a lot of his shows, he has them back behind him. So whenever I do get a green tree python, so here I said when, not if, I will definitely be looking into getting them in the Focus Cube habitats. And then we have Conduit Constrictors. If you guys aren't following them on Instagram, go give them a hit up. They are big players in the game, especially in the DG projects. Really nice, down to earth people as well. I've met them personally, and they even hit me up kind of randomly out of the blue. It was like, hey, Krista, how's your season going? What projects are you into? And that really meant a lot to me that they were interested in what I was doing. So definitely give them a follow. And last but not least, of course, US ARC. If you are pet keeper, breeder, or even just love reptiles, you need to submit to US ARC. They fight for our rights as reptile keepers and lovers, and being able to keep these animals, and for our overall happiness. It really takes numbers. So go on, support them. They'd have different tiers. There's no excuse really to not support them. Really the most important body out there fighting for rights against the legislatives. So with that, I'm going to say hi to you guys up in the chat. We got Travis, TNS Reptiles. I met Travis at a St. Louis local show last weekend, so that was fantastic to be able to see him in person. We got Eric's MORPH Factory. Thanks for hopping in. JD, nice to see you. The Wild Type Podcast, hello. If you guys haven't already, also go look at their podcast. Subscribe to them. I've been listening to them a little bit over the past few weeks, and they've got some fantastic content. Mike, how are you doing? Thanks for stopping in. Ryan, Morph Valerie, Chopper family. Biggie, Top G. Hello, sir. Phil, Constrictly Business. How you doing? Or Exotics, thanks for hopping in. We got Justin here. Mint Boas, thank you guys. A lot of you guys in the comments. Cousin, yeah. And Smachi's Royal. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but it's a really cool name. And with that, we're going to stop it right here. If you don't already have your lemonade or a little drink or something, get that going because we're about to get right into topics. Here we go. So again, episode 2 coming at you live.
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man,
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes,
exclusive. Oh,
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crowd, God love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up.
All right, here we go. Episode 2, Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast. Caila, how are you? Did you like that little? I love that intro. I'm sorry, but
Dude, the intro makes me want to go just buy some ball pythons, okay?
Yeah.
Right now in this economy, we really need that.
It is the best intro. I'm sorry, but I don't learn how to do that little hat trick too, where he like throws it and it comes back. I gotta learn how to do that. So
I'm just like, who needs to go to the club when we just have, this
yes, they need
here?
to. I don't know where he got that, but I love that intro. But so how's it going? How's your weekend?
Same old, just upgrading our entire reptile room, so nothing.
Oh, yeah, I'm really excited to hear and get into that. So, hey, did you do anything crazy today, or just kind of taking it slow?
I admin a Final Fantasy group online because I'm a nerd. So not admin, I moderate it. I'm sorry. But anyways, so just kind of busy with alerts and stuff like that in there today. Did some client calls, got to spread myself around a little bit.
Okay, that's cool. Well, you said Final Fantasy?
Yeah.
Can you quickly explain what that? I don't even know what that is, but I'm curious.
Do you play video games?
No, that's probably not. I really thought of football. I forget what that's called too, but some that is different. I don't know.
You know what? All right, I'll just do free marketing for the Final Fantasy group. It's the Final Fantasy VII Remake dash Rebirth group on Facebook. And if anyone's a nerd and wants to, come interact and have a great time, we have tons of discussion on like boss fights and like favorite characters and stuff like that. So it's a community of over 100,000 people. So it's a great time on Facebook.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting this to start out with that, but you know what? We're going there.
Hey, I asked some questions here. I asked it. So.
And it's funny because I have people from the community that are in the chat right now.
Oh, really? That's so funny. I have a very curious mind, so I was like, should I go for it? I was like, oh yeah, let me just go for it. I gotta ask. So I thought football, but I was like, football is not going on right now. I was like, is this because you're in Canada, right?
Yes.
I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, is Canadian football going on right now? That's what I thought. But yeah, okay.
No. We need men with big swords, okay? The people who know. Cloud Strife, go look him up. He's,
Oh my God, hilarious. What part of Canada are you from?
from Ontario.
From Ontario. Okay. Okay.
So I'm in Kitchener. It's about 45 minutes away from Toronto.
Okay. I really would like to visit Canada. I heard your guys' summers are really pretty and stuff.
The 2 months that we get of summer.
2 months. I'm not a winter person, so I'm not going to go in the wintertime.
Don't go in the wintertime. No, it's bad. Come in the summer and then buy maple syrup. That's pretty much what we have.
Yes. That is on the bucket list, is the maple syrup. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And not like the bullshit maple syrup. You need like the real deal from the farmer's market.
Oh, okay. Do they have different flavors and stuff? Different flavors?
We have like light, we have dark. There's, all different types of maple syrup. But we have maple syrup cookies, and then also we some people probably don't know, but our milk, instead of coming in like jugs, it's in bags. We have bagged milk. So you just have some milk and some maple syrup cookies, and you'll feel like Santa Claus 24/7.
I have a lot more questions, but maybe at a different very interesting. Bag milk. I have to look that up because I'm curious on like the expiration date if it stays longer than your jug milk. What's the reasoning for the bag milk? That's the one question I'll ask.
No one knows, and the thing is it's all BS, because they make you bring your own reusable bag to the grocery store, but then all of the milk is already in plastic bags. So I'm like, where's the logic here? I don't know.
Fascinating.
So
I guess I'm going to start off by asking the most basic, question with interviews. But what, tell us your background, how you got to where you're at, what animals you keep, how many, that kind of thing.
All the deets. You want my personal intimate deets. All right. So MJ asked me this question when I did his podcast last year, and I can never tell you when I started keeping. I only know that I saw ball pythons being posted in this group called Sneck the Hissing Booth on Facebook, which is no longer a thing. And I was like, wow, those are really cute. What are those? Because they have the cute little noses. And immediately I wanted one, because I was into aquatics for over a decade. So I bred and kept like fancy goldfish like Ryukin and stuff like that. And then I was to a point where when my last goldfish passed away, I'm like, I would like something that I can physically hold and enjoy as a pet a little bit more than that, but not something that's as high maintenance as a cat or a dog. So I kind of started looking to see what I could get, and I stumbled across ball pythons, and then I fell in love pretty much immediately. I've never kept another species of reptile. I always tell people I don't know anything about any reptile outside of ball pythons. If you ask me how to keep a gecko, I'd be like, it's going to die. Because I don't know.
I'm not sending you any of mine then.
No, don't. Like, it's going to go bye-bye. So the ball pythons, I got into that, and I started researching. I wanted an older snake. I wanted one that had been handled quite a bit and stuff like that. So then I ended up purchasing Joob off of Kijiji, which is like our Canadian Craigslist. And it was really cool because the breeder that I got him from, this was quite a few years ago. I've been in the industry for over 5 years, but maybe not 10 yet. I'm not sure. Again, I don't keep track. Like, I don't have dates. But it was really cool. I believe it was around like 2016-ish. So it was neat because this snake had actually been one of his first breeders in his collection. And he was very concerned about this animal going to like a good home and stuff like that. So he actually drove to my house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I told him, I said, I've never kept a ball python before. Like, I had done a lot of research at that point. But he wanted to come make sure that everything was okay. He actually like checked my temps when I was here, made sure I had that. So it was very like thorough.
Wow. That's good.
And it was funny because I actually paid like $100 for Joob back in the day. He's a lesser entry. And yeah, now he's spawned an Instagram of over 90,000 people. So
Great. Yeah.
$100 snake.
Where does the name Joob come from?
I try to name them all food names. So Joobs are like they're called Joobs, but like whatever. We're semantics, okay? But they're these little like jelly candies.
Okay.
So there's Joobs. We have a snake named Lady Licorice. We have Marshmallow, Baby Coconut, Cookies and Cream. The only one that's an outlier is Kyle's ball python, and his name is Lucas Snackwalker.
Oh, that's cool. I get it.
You know, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you have, how many was that? 4?
I have 8 currently.
Oh, 8. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was at about 12 at one point, and then I don't know how people have like 500 of these things, man. I just don't. I'm like, oh my Lord. It got to be quite a lot. So I had a lot of people asking me. I have a wait list actually of people who would love ball pythons that are like very tamed down and super good for like, you know, taking to I have one girl who specifically wanted a ball python that would be okay for her to do education with at schools, and she brings her to retirement homes.
Oh wow, cool.
I sold her my black bee, so black pastel spider, and because I knew what that snake was, I'm like, that's going to be a great fit for you. And she's had that snake now for like a year. She's taken it everywhere and she loves it. So I always have people looking for really good snakes like that. Because a lot of people don't want to start out with a juvenile. They want something that's already like ready to go.
I see. Okay. So is there like a perception that a juvenile was not handleable, or?
No, I think it varies, right? Like a lot of pet keepers want to have a juvenile to like take it and grow up with it essentially, and like see it through from a baby to an adult. But there are also a vast majority of pet keepers that love adult ball pythons, and they love like retired breeders and stuff like that. And I find that if you can hit that they're eating frozen, and you know they're used to being in a little bit of a larger environment, so it's not such a hard transition. Pet keepers will really go for the older ones. So
Interesting. Okay, so you're more, you don't breed or anything, right? You just have that you keep as pets, correct?
yeah, correct. So, and I want to say hi to Inked Lady Morphs in the comments. I love Cat and Row. They're there. Popsicle is actually one of the snakes that we sold to them. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, Popsicle the Dreamsicle.
I love that name.
Yeah, so he went from Canada to the US. So and he's doing well. But yeah. I'm sorry, repeat your question.
I was just making sure that you don't breed. Is there, because you were breeding like fish, so was there like a reason why you don't want to breed? Because I feel like talking to people, a lot of them have that kind of want to breed, kind of everything. So what made you not want to breed reptiles?
I had the idea for it because during COVID, like everyone else, I was like, oh, cool, let's, get some ball pythons. I got some really cool TSK Xanthics that are from JD Constrictions line. So they're beautiful animals, 2 females. And I did have thoughts on possibly breeding them. And then I looked at the industry overall and I was like, at this point, does the industry really need another breeder? I'm like, I feel like I can serve the industry better with just like education and having a smaller amount of animals, and basically focusing on more of the husbandry aspect of it.
Okay, that's interesting, because there's one thing I've seen some posts about it, like on Instagram. Somebody will post themselves walking around like an expo or something, just showing tables, and I've seen some comments in there. People like, oh, overbreeding ball pythons, or oh, look at the puppy mill breeder, and they're just showing, animals at expo. So what are your thoughts on the pet keeper side of things? Is that the majority that they see that ball pythons are being overproduced? I mean, I get where they're coming from, because you do see a lot of them that have to be rehomed. I've seen a lot of that in groups that I'm in, ones that are just released. I mean, I think back in January, in my previous apartment, I took her in by a leopard gecko that was just left out in the dumpster in a critter keeper cage. And this is Missouri at like probably 40 degrees outside, probably would have died the next hour or two. But I mean, so it's a thing. So I didn't know what your thoughts were on that too.
So I can never speak for like the majority of pet keepers or the majority of breeders. I'm just one person in a sea of people in this industry. But for me, I I do firmly believe that the ball python market is oversaturated right now. We've seen the amount of animals pre-COVID versus post-COVID that are being sold on MORPH market and stuff, especially ball pythons, just skyrocket. It's unreal. And I have always been a very firm one to believe that only the animals with the best genetics should be being bred and should have those genetics passed on. So even though I'm just a pet keeper, I've been told by many breeders that I have a good eye for quality because I really like to see an animal have the best display of those genetics as possible, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I do feel like there were a lot of basement breeders, essentially, is what I call them. I call them in the video game industry because that's why I do full-time basement resellers. But basement breeders who they bought a bunch of animals, like collections off Craigslist or whatever, and they thought that they could make a quick buck on it. And now, we're to a point where that's not the case. And I think that as anything with the economy, we're going to see an ebb and flow in the market. So right now things are slow, but I think that it'll pick up again over time. But I do think that there's also a lot more animals available now. So it'll be interesting to see the flux in that. But personally, I don't breed because I do not want to contribute to the ball python market in that way. I think that I can contribute in different ways that doesn't involve, me being there in that capacity.
Okay, I get that. As far as animals that maybe shouldn't not be bred in that case, do you think they're more like obviously your spiders, or do you think it's like your
wow. Let's get right into that. What you know about spider ball pythons, Caila? Oh, good.
No, I mean that's a thing. I mean that's a huge thing though. Breeding them. I mean, I kind of, do we want to continue that?
I did give you free rein on this.
What?
Okay, so contrary to popular belief, I love spider ball pythons. So I actually have quite a few spider ball pythons in my own collection. I find them quite endearing. They're very good eaters, and they also have very funny personalities from what I've seen. They're quirky, and I do enjoy them. However, as for the breeding side of things, I think that it should be oh boy. I think
take a whole hour on this.
We could. I'm like thinking of it where I want to start on this. It should be at the breeder's discretion if they would like to breed them, and it should be at the pet keeper's discretion if they would like to purchase them. So there's a lot of pet keepers that don't understand that like bumblebee actually means that it's spider. So I think that animals do need to be clearly labeled, and people do need to be aware of an animal that has a tendency to have a neurological issue. I also think that breeders need to take care if they are selling a spider morph ball python, that really I found with them, the wobble can get quite elevated if that animal is under stress or duress. So we do need to make sure that those animals are being housed at the correct temperatures, as we do with all of them. But with spider ball pythons and, Hingine woma, et cetera, champagnes, all of those, we need to make sure that both the breeder and the pet keeper are doing their due diligence in educating about those animals, and then also how they're being kept after the sale. As for inherently breeding them, one of my TSK xanthics is a fire bee TSK xanthic, so she is a spider. Personally, I think that she makes she would make beautiful offspring, but I would not personally breed spider ball pythons at this point. It's something that I did think about because she's so beautiful. I really love the high white pattern on them, etc. I can only speak for myself, but I personally would not move forward with that at this point.
Okay, that's a pretty good answer. Yeah, I didn't mean to get you a spider, but I mean, it brings back the ethical part of it, right? Like
that's the thing. And one other thing that I do want to touch on too, I think that spider gets a lot of hate inherently because of very uneducated pet tubers making videos. I'm going to throw that out there. I do not care. I think that there has been so much controversy with pet keepers basically making videos on spider ball pythons for clout. And they are taking the worst examples of a neurological animal and putting them on display on YouTube and being like, bad, bad, bad. Whereas if you look at mine, with the fire bee, you'd never even know that she had anything. So it's very unfair to categorize all spiders as inherently. They all have a tendency to be neurological, but to a varying degree.
Yeah, that's the tough part of it, for sure.
Yeah, and also a lot of people focus in on spider as well, but they'll look at hidden gene woma, or they'll look at a champagne, and they'll be like, oh, this animal's fine, because spider is the one that people hone in on. Like they are like, boom, like rocket ship right into it.
Well, you see the same thing with power balls too, like super spot nose, but a lot of people kind of glorify those. So yeah.
Yeah, so, exactly. And those animals can live amazing lives. Like my spider ball pythons, they'll live amazing lives. Like there'll be nothing wrong with them. They're great animals. They are my favorite animals. I want to say that they are my favorite. Besides Joob, he gets the #1 spot. But #2 goes to Lady Licorice, and #3 goes to Lucas, and they're both spiders. So I would not trade my spiders for anything. And I think that if we're going to talk in absolutes on not breeding spiders, et cetera, I think that we need to be looking outside of that morph. We need to be looking at all the neurological morphs. We need to be looking at morphs as well that inherently have a lot of kinks and stuff like that too. It's not just neurological issues. We have animals, like I believe it's like pandapides.
Yeah. Pastel and you can mix them with the other genes in that complex to try to get, but you still kind of get the kinking. So maybe it brings back where we should be looking at lineages. So since we're not seeing it in every, I mean, that's a huge thing in the green tree python is the lineage. So maybe spider is one that can be looked at as a lineage type of thing, where if you're not having that wobble generations after generations after generations and essentially try to breed it out, that could be another way of kind of circumventing or preventing the reproduction of, snakes with wobble. I don't know.
That's exactly it. And like, I've actually seen breeders who they have, like, I believe that they were black-eyed leucistics. This was years ago. And those animals had like inherently very small eyes, like a defect in the snake. And they were like, I'm going to breed them anyways because white snakes sell to pet keepers. And I was so vocal about that because I'm like, that's gross. Because I said, you have an animal with an inherent genetic defect. And I said, you are knowingly passing that on. So, I guess that is the same thing, even though it's not like physical that you could see with a spider, like in a lot of them, or any like neurological morph. Maybe that's the way to look at it, just that it is a defect in the animal and we shouldn't proceed with it. We had animals years ago that were just desert. So not desert ghost.
Oh yeah.
You remember desert, and we had they had the egg binding in the females.
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah. So those you don't see deserts anymore. Like people just were done with them. I could get really into the Scaleless project.
Yeah,
I could get deep into that, but we don't have to go there.
People like to collect. I'm saying.
Yeah. And I know that there's someone in the comments. The super lessers. Yeah, it tends to have the smaller eyes. Yeah, I believe that that's probably what it was. Again, don't quote me on it because it was years ago. But it was very noticeable in those particular animals. So yeah, the bug eyes were a little bit it was a little concerning.
Yeah, I mean, if you get an animal like that, then obviously say to the person who's buying it that they have this deformity, probably shouldn't breed it. But if you're purposely breeding it, that's where I think it's kind of like, why should we be?
Yeah. So, but again, that's my own perception of it. And really that's all I can ever do. Like, that's all we can ever do in podcasts, anything like that, is we can only give our inherent like perception on how we feel about something. So how I feel about it may not be how other people feel about it, but
Sure.
At the end of the day, that's what creates constructive dialogue.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, just the education, and that's what I'm wanting this podcast to be anyways. People just learning and, talking about things in a constructive manner. If you surround yourself by people who think differently than you, you're more likely to learn.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly it. Yeah, it was an interesting question. I was not expecting that one. I was like, oh, we're hitting me with the neurological ones, right?
Well, I mean, as I've been in this for a year. I bought my first one, I guess, in 2022, but I really started investing and building it up a year ago in July. So literally 1 year from today.
Yeah.
Or this month or whatever. So that was the thing I learned: is spider bad, which isn't really the case. I think it gets the bad rap because of the wobble, and maybe because it's being proclaimed on the pet YouTuber side that hurts sales. What do breeders care about? We care about sales. So therefore, we don't want to breed spiders because we're afraid even though they sell well as pets. I don't know. There's multiple different sides of it.
I think, as with anything, it's up to the buyer if they choose to buy it. And with my channel, it is quite frustrating because when I post Lucas and stuff like that, Lucas actually doesn't have a wobble, really. But he does bounce for food. Don't ask. Okay, we've kind of like encouraged it. We feed him and he bounces up and down and he gets excited. The amount of comments that I have on my stuff all the time saying how Lucas should be euthanized because of his bounce. And I'm like, what? This animal is thriving. Like,
terrible. You'd be surprised. As a vet, I've seen people be like, this cat is scratching up my furniture, I want it euthanized, type of. So I mean, yeah, people have that mindset. I also want to shout out 3X Hollow here for the super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
That's I know exactly who that
I know
that is. Appreciate you. I love Royal Canadian Reptiles. So I love Will. Will is someone who I have a great respect for in the industry. We have great discussions and we see each other quite a bit at the expos and things. I completely agree with him. When we're splicing a bunch of stuff together, you just never know how it's going to come out. And inherently, sometimes I think that people need to understand that breeders, they see things that might be horrific to a pet keeper a lot of the times. They might see animals, come out and they're just completely deformed or something like that. And that is a huge part of, breeding and being in the industry and progressing the ball python hobby as a whole. So
I mean, yeah, we're not doing this. Doesn't happen in nature. Okay, we're selectively picking the traits. In nature, they're just kind of whoever runs into who. That's who procreates or whatever. So we're playing.
We're playing God. Religion.
See the genes, that we're breeding, but then there's also genes underlying that affect that function that we don't think about. We just think about visually the genes that we see, but don't think the underlying, all the tens of thousands of other genes that regulate metabolic.
That's exactly it. And we're just taking one snake and we're like, yeah, let's have some kinky time with this other snake. And we're like, let's see what you make. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, you're pretty. Yeah. So
to put it non-eloquently.
So yeah, Will is awesome. I'm in his Patreon and I've learned a lot of things and made a lot of friends. So he's awesome.
Yeah, Will, if I have I've actually had a question that I went to Will about. because it was a snake that I had that was a failure to thrive. And I had went to Will because I had really tried everything that I possibly could with this animal. And I was like, at this point, you know, like, what's your opinion on this? Because I do value his opinion greatly. And he came back to me and he's like, Caila, he said, I know you want to try, but he said, sometimes you just can't. And he's like, as breeders, he said, we understand that inherently not every single animal is going to thrive. And he said, in the wild, they wouldn't either. And he said, I don't think that you should feel bad at this point. He said, for like making the decision of humane euthanasia. So these are like topics. This is why I value breeders so much, because we do have these constructive dialogues together. And if I didn't have people like this to go to, you know, I wouldn't have a sounding board for these issues, right?
For sure. And I mean, I see that on the vet side too, with people that are breeding puppies and they have litters, and no matter how much you talk to them about it, they're not all going to thrive. And people don't understand. They take it personally that they did something wrong when it's in the animal's inherent nature. They're just, no matter what you do, even if you take it to the nearest vet clinic and spend $30,000-$40,000 trying to save it, it's not going to happen. It's the animals, they have a will to live, you know, type of thing. So
it just didn't. It was the sweetest. He was the sweetest snake. Sweet personality, like God, you know, I loved him so much more. I have this one that's just an asshole right now. And I'm like, oh, you know, you're the worst. I'm like, oh my Lord. You know, he's kind of endearing that he's such a dick though. So
aren't they? They make him more lovable being like,
yeah, I'm like, you know what? Every time you try to attack me, it just makes me kind of like you more. We have an understanding now. But I really love this snake, and it was such a shame because he was a really sweet pet. He was just a little lovable guy, but
he just wouldn't eat. Is that what? No matter what you did, any type of enclosure.
We eat a little bit by doing, like, we did the Da Vinci boa stuff. We scented stuff with ASFs. Like it was like we tried different size tubs. Like every tub under the sun, we were like, you know. Yeah, it just, you know, it didn't work out. And that's something that happens. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate, but it's a facet of keeping.
How old was the snake? Was it pretty young?
Yeah, pretty young.
Okay.
Like only like a couple years, like a year and a half, maybe.
Okay. Gotcha.
But it was one where like the breeder knew that it was probably not going to do well, and we took it with that knowledge because they were assist feeding it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I got it. That makes a whole lot more sense, because I'm like, you know, I was like, you know, 1 to 2 years old. I was like, why would it have failure to thrive? But if it did, you know, ever since it was born,
ever since it was born, yeah, it was a tough one. And again, like the breeder actually was just like, you know, this is not a great animal, but we were like, you know, it's so pretty, I want to try. Right, typical like bleeding heart. I want to try so bad, and you know, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So that's what ended up happening on that one. But I like talking about this stuff, because if we don't talk about the you know, the sad or the negative aspects of the industry, I feel like we're not really getting a picture of keeping as a whole.
Correct. I mean, with anything, there's different sides and different ways of thinking on stuff. So if we get as many certain ideas on different topics from other people, we can kind of make our own consensus of what we feel like is right to do, whether you're a keeper or breeder. So depending on what your goal is, I guess. So.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing you kind of touched on a little bit was tubs. And so how do you keep you know, hey, we talked about beforehand, we're going to get into it right now. So how do you keep your snakes? And I realize it's changing, so you can kind of talk into about that.
Oh, we're going to go into the evolution.
Oh, actually, well, we'll
early 1900s. No.
We had a question. We'll answer this question and then we'll go. We're also going to have a Q&A at the end too, that we'll have a little bit, but I guess we'll answer this before we move into the other topics.
Yeah, we have to address Will. He's over there, you know, he's taking the time. And thank you to Creative Reptiles as well. I want to say, like, I really appreciate your comments.
Yeah, Elias is awesome. So my big question is, when we do have an issue with babies, even if it's a good combo, should we still try to propagate that bloodline? Where do you draw a line? I mean, that's the thing I've thought myself, because you have certain genes that are known to be like not good eaters or whatever. And theoretically, if you breed that animal, will their offspring then have issues with feeding and eating? So you can go first.
Will smack. Smacking me hard here. I'm just getting beat down in this podcast. we're not even in it yet. So if it's a good combo, should we still try to propagate?
Good combo. I mean, more about good combo.
I guess like it depends, because with like I don't know if there's, again, I don't breed, so I don't know if there's ever been a time where someone has just an entire clutch of ball pythons that just don't eat, or like there is something significantly wrong with the animals in that regard. In that situation, I might be like, try the pairing one more time. Patricia just threw it in the comment. Yeah, I'm on the same page, Patricia. Try it one more time. And if, you have issues again, then it wasn't meant to be. But for snakes, if you're breeding snakes and they come out just like warped out, like they are kinked, they have shark mouth, etc., then that is not a pairing that should be repeated.
Yeah. I agree with that too. And the feeding, for me, I think it comes down to, and again, I just had my first clutch hatch out last week, so I haven't even gone into the whole needing to assist feed yet on that aspect, but
get ready. I've had to do it and I don't even breed, so like, get ready.
But like, kind of draw, okay, if I fist feed a couple times, then it's good for the majority, but I feel like if you keep having to do it for months and months and months and months, and it's not, that failure to thrive, I probably wouldn't breed that mom again. I think I would like to say that, but again, watch it be that one freaking triple recessive or something that you're just like
the holy grail. You're like, oh yeah, this is so nice, and then it just sucks. You're like,
I have one of those, and she's my favorite.
It's like shit,
Yeah, that's where I kind of am thinking. Obviously, if there's a physical issue, depending on what genes are at play, maybe repeating it. If it happens again, absolutely not. And the feeding thing, I think it's case by case basis on how well the animal actually has that thrive ability for me.
I think so too. Yeah, all of the snakes. I don't like when people say that ball python's a ball python, snake's a snake. No, they all have inherent personalities, and they all have inherent likes and dislikes. Sure, they may not have emotions in any sort of capacity, but they definitely still do have that like personality there on each animal. Anyone who's spent like a significant amount of time with like their favorites will recognize the differences in them.
For sure. I agree with that. Yeah, I can already tell some of the differences in personality between mine. So that's one thing I thought was really interesting too, that they're not all, type rocks.
Yeah. Joob is very aloof. So people think, because he wears like the sheriff hat and stuff like that, that he is like super friendly, down for anything. But actually, when I've had people come visit, because I've had people ask, if they can come see him, or like, it's pretty rare that I let people into my snake room, but if it's like a kid and they really want to see him for like their birthday or something like that, then I'm like, okay. Joob he becomes like a pancake. He looks like a hog nose. He's cute. Because he hates everyone. he won't like strike at you, but you can tell he's just so unimpressed.
He's like, my life.
He's like, leave me alone. But then we have Marshmallow, who's my lesser Mojave, and he's like the world's most friendly animal ever. He's super outgoing. I had a couple breeders come to my house one time, KB Reptiles, because they were dropping off some substrate for me. And they were like, oh, because he was like waving at the glass, and they're like, oh, do we want to take him out for a minute? I was like, sure. And I remember putting him on Barrows, and immediately Marshmallow stuck his nose right in Barrows's mouth.
Oh.
And he was like, oh, gross, dude. And I said, yeah, that's just Marshmallow. I said, like, that's just what he does.
That's funny.
So yeah, they all have different personalities for sure. Some of them are very outgoing. Some of them are more reserved, more friendly. The only one that I have that's an asshole is my my orange dream, my high OD calico. He's a bag of dicks. And I love him, but he's
beautiful. Yeah.
so mean to me, but I love him. He's so beautiful. He's like one of the most beautiful snakes in my collection, but he's always been so rude to me.
It's like they know, right? It's like
Yeah.
they know they're pretty, and so.
Yeah, he just hates me as a human. He hates me as a person. So that's fine.
It's funny. So back to, how are you keeping them, and what made you want to keep them that way? And you're transitioning and all of that.
Right. So initially when we started keeping, we had Joob, and we had like, I think it was one or two other snakes. Again, this was years ago. And we started off with exoterras. So we did the typical pet keeper setup. We had the exoterra glass terrarium. We had the ceramic heat emitter. I did have thermostats. I was very hardcore about that. So I had them on exoterra thermostats, which were, they unfortunately all died. So, go with Herpstat, guys. Go with Herpstat. So we had them in these glass tanks. And inherently, I do not agree with housing ball pythons in glass tanks at all. It's very difficult to maintain humidity in glass. You have to have quite a thick substrate layer in order to do it, and mix water into it. And it's just, you shouldn't have to work that hard. Like, I suppose it also depends on where you live in the world. So if you live in a very humid climate, then maybe you can get away, with keeping your snake on aspen or, in a glass tank. We have to factor in those things too. But for me, I live in Canada, and it's inherently quite a dry climate, especially in the winter. So the glass tanks didn't work out well for us. So that's something that I ended up getting rid of. I sold the glass tanks, and then we actually did 41 quart tub setups. So clear tubs. I still actually have one of my 41 quart racks. I use it as like a quarantine rack and stuff like that. And we kept snakes in these 41 quart tubs for a couple years. And then there was so much controversy that I kept hearing about in the industry of people talking about how when ball pythons were transitioning to larger enclosures, that they would stop eating. This is something that we hear all the time across the board. And me being the person who I like little experiments. So I was like, let's invest, $10,000+ in freedom breeder racks. And I'm like, we'll do big freedom breeders because it's going to be like something that no one else has ever done before. And I said, well, go ahead and we will actually set up these 4 foot by 2 foot freedom breeders like a PVC would be set up, with all like 5+ hides, all the foliage, etc. So I ended up calling Jesse a freedom breeder because there wasn't really anything like with the website. There was some modifications that would need made for these to work for ball pythons. And it would include like larger heat panels so that they would cover a bigger area. Because the snake is significantly smaller, right? Than a boa or something like that, which are what these racks are intended for. So we talked about all of these things. We went through, ventilation, what we wanted to do on that front, how we wanted to bolt them so that they wouldn't be like front heavy. There was so much that went into this process, and Jesse was amazing to work with. So we ended up getting these, it's actually the 66-4, but ours have upgrades, quite a few upgrades to what would be like on the website. If anyone, wants to buy one, you can always have them look up like our profile and specs and what we went with. But I ended up transitioning all of our animals from the 41 quart tubs into these large 4 foot by 2 foot. They have the plexiglass window fronts, thing like that. Mm-hmm. And the majority of our ball pythons transitioned fine. Because we had been using hides and stuff with them in the 41 quart, it wasn't as big of an issue than a snake going from a completely barren tub into like a large environment. But I did start to see these animals unlock quite a bit. So animals that would have just sat in their hides before I see them out and about, and they're cruising, and they're really thermoregulating and utilizing all of this space fully. So they aren't just pet rocks that are like sitting in one hide, hiding all the time. So as of right now, we've had the Freedom Breeders set up since 2020. And so it's been years. It's been years of us doing this. We have not had, so I actually keep a record logbook. Every time I feed, every time an animal sheds, I record it in a logbook. And I've actually been doing this since 2019 with our animals because I wanted tangible like proof. Hey, here is what's been happening with these snakes. The snakes that would go off feed, like Joob goes off feed every year for 2 months. He always has. He did at the breeders as well, even in his tub setup. He just always does. And, that's something that has not changed with him going from like a 41 quart into, a Freedom Breeder into a PVC. He's actually been very consistent across the board. And I would argue that all of our animals have been. So if there is a time where an animal, does go off feed and they are in that, breeder mode or whatever, that time of year, it's pretty rare that they do here. The majority of ours eat very well. But they've been consistent. And then the animals that I knew were not going to transition well, which were the more inherently shy snakes, actually the dreamsicle that I sold to Inked Lady MORPHs, I did tell them before I shipped him out. I said, this is a snake that really only thrives in a 41 quart tub. And I said, because every time we actually moved him into our big Freedom Breeders, he would go off feed. Like he just wouldn't eat. So we have this snake who doesn't eat, but we have the majority of the animals that do eat when we move them over. So they're all individuals. That's the thing that we have to gauge from this is all of these snakes are individuals, and we cannot put like these labels on these animals to say that inherently, if you take a snake and put it in a larger tub, it's going to go off feed. And that's what I hear across the board all the time, but it's just not accurate. It's always going to be individual based. And that's where we kind of get into the difficulties between the breeder side and the pet keeper side. Because if a pet keeper buys the animal and it is one of those animals that isn't transitioning well into the pet environment, into a PVC, whatever, then the breeder starts to get complaints. And it's, I think it creates a bit of animosity on both sides of the coin, if I can be completely honest. It makes breeders have a negative view of pet keepers that, we're inherently doing something wrong. And then pet keepers have a very negative view of the breeder because they're like, well, you didn't prepare this animal to come to my house. So I'm frustrated. And we get frustrations, and then there's no dialogue, there's no communication, and people don't want to deal with each other. And that's the biggest problem that I see across the board.
I've seen a lot of my friends at shows have care guides kind of describing how a setup should be. You think people should know, but I've also ran into a lot of people on the vet side, they have the temperatures wrong, or that is also, not having a thermostat too. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I think it is based on the individual.
Oh my God, I can talk about this.
Go ahead.
This is why I preach so hard that even if people don't agree with the way that I keep, so let's say people don't agree, with me putting the ball pythons in big Freedom Breeders. Let's say they don't agree with, the PVC upgrades that I'm doing. And they think that the tub is the best place for the animal. That's fine. But as a breeder, you should be opening and broadening your horizons and learning about these different facets of keeping, because it's going to help you sell animals in the long run to have this knowledge. Because if you do get a pet keeper that comes along and they're like, hey, I have this at home, or I'm going to Focus Cubed and I'm getting a top of the line PVC, which animal do you think would thrive in that? Or, what do you think I should do for heating and lighting? Well, a lot of breeders can't answer those questions. They just can't. Or if the pet keeper goes, oh, hey, what would you recommend for a hide for this adult, retired breeder that I'm getting, or something like that? They can't off the top of their head talk about these things. And this is why education on both sides of the coin is so important. And this is why I do what I do, because I want to bridge that gap between both sides of the industry. I want to say, hey, look, you know, breeders, you guys are doing a great job, but there are things that you guys can do to make the transition easier for the pet keeper getting, you know, their first animal. Pet keepers, there are things that you guys can do, you know, to communicate with the breeder and be like, hey, you know, do you think that this is going to be a good fit for me? Here's the setup that I've got. And then there should be that discourse where breeders are talking to pet keepers about maybe what they can improve on, or, you know, what they would change, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like there's not enough discussion on this stuff.
For sure. I think those care guides are the way to do it. So I know some of my friends who do sell to pet keepers are doing now, and I think it helps. And also opening that dialogue too, and letting the customer know that they need to come back to you if the animal's not doing well, right? Because they'll be like 6 months later, 7 months, they're like, oh yeah, they'll come back to you, be like, oh yeah, it died, or oh, it's not eating. And at that point, you're kind of like, well, we maybe could have stepped in ahead of time and helped fixed it. So that's also to be known that, hey, you should be able to come to us at any time, but please, within the first, you know, month, please let us know how they're doing. Or I set like a little reminder for myself to check back in with that person in a couple weeks and just say, hey, how's the animal doing? I think that can help too. It's more work on us, but we should do the very best we can for these and
I'll be honest with you. We're going to have another little controversial take here. This is my opinion. This is why I support, you know, breeders on a smaller scale. And I do not buy from breeders who have like, you know, just not any longer, that breeders that just have, you know, like 4,000, 5,000 animals, because they don't know what that animal's inherently like. And I want to have that good one-on-one connection, because the majority of breeders that I've bought from, like my 2 Xanthics, are from Matt. He runs Ball Brilliance. And we are very close. Like, we have stayed in contact with, you know, these snakes, and I tag him and stuff all the time. And that's the relationship that I want to have when I'm purchasing an animal. Like, hey, you know, do you want to see your animal when it's an adult? It's like, you know, I would think that most people that produce these animals would be proud of that, and they'd want to see it. But you do get some breeders who just, they don't have the time for it, or they just don't have the interest. And it's not, you know, different breeders for different things. But personally, I want to have more of that one-on-one connection with someone if I'm moving forward with an animal purchase.
I think that's where us smaller guys can kind of shine, right? That kind of gives us like a leg up. Like, we may not have the biggest collection or cater to all the genetic projects there is, but that is something that we can really work the best at, is customer service.
Yeah.
So that, I think more people are seeing that too. But it's hard, I think, at the pet level, but then when you're getting up higher up to the certain genetics, you're obviously going to go to the breeder that's producing that one specific animal.
And that's where, like, the breeder to breeder, again, I'm not a breeder, so I'm just like speculating, but I would assume that it's quite a bit different, because breeders are inherently housing very similarly. They have similar, you know, methods of keeping. They have, you know, similar methods of feeding, etc. So it's not as different, or it's not as big of a transition, I should say, for the animal to go from breeder to breeder, because everything really stays the same. But it is really that breeder to pet keeper where we get that little bit of turbulence in the transaction.
Yeah, I would say with that, I've said from the breeder to, because I'm a breeder myself, most of them has transitioned well. There's been a few that haven't. One girl took a very long time to get back on food. She was also an older girl, like around 5 or 6 years old. She was bred and produced at the facility I got her from down south. So kind of, we think there's a lot of differences in pressure and stuff that goes along with it too, in shipping. But I think that had a bigger to do with her not transitioning as well. She's doing fantastic now, but it took her, you know, 6-7 months or whatever to finally be able to get used. It wasn't only I moved to a new place where she was like, oh, I'm like, fantastic. I'm like, okay, what a 10-minute move, whatever, you know. But yeah, I think that has to do, even breeder to breeder, there can be some. Age is a factor, or some of my tubs have, like we talked about, the clear part where they're coming from.
Yeah, we did that in our personal talk. We didn't actually get into it on here with the blackout tubs versus the clear.
Yeah.
So if we
can go into that too. I have the clear.
just go into it all.
Hey, we have a little time. Yeah, blackout is like, what am I understanding, the breeder and the RS tubs.
It's the grayed out tubs. So the ones that are solid where the animal is like essentially in complete darkness. Versus like a semi-opaque tub or a clear tub where the animal can see out of it. I think that how these animals grow up and in the environments that they grow up vastly shapes how they are as adults. And I have seen, even with my own snakes on a smaller scale, that those animals being kept in blackout tubs that I got as adults, they are not as well adjusted as the snakes that have been kept in the clear tubs, because inherently the snakes in the clear tubs, well, the blackout tubs, it's sensory deprivation. So the only positive stimuli those animals are getting is when we're opening the tub, throwing the rat in, closing the tub. Whereas at least with the opaque tubs or the clear tubs, those animals are experiencing as much as they can a day and night cycle because they can see through. They're experiencing people walking by them. They can see things that are going on. So I do, if there's one thing that I can really say that I don't particularly love about rack systems, it would be blackout tubs. That is the one thing that I just, I think they do have a purpose, especially for an animal that may be having a difficult time, eating. It just really needs that quiet space. But in general, I feel with my own experiences, like animals in clear tubs are significantly more well adjusted because of what they've experienced, just with, the sights and sounds in the room. So that's something that's that not a lot of people touch on. But inherently, I don't think that rack systems are bad, and I want to make that very clear. I think that rack systems really have a lot of different purposes for a lot of different people. And even right now, I sent you a message earlier, right before we got on this podcast, because I have 3 snakes in my 41 quart right now, because we're setting up temperatures in the PVCs. We're setting up temperatures. Like, I don't want to cook them.
Yes, I wanted to show people these PVCs.
So I was going to say, we're setting up temperatures in these PVCs.
You can see my screen, right? Yeah, these PVCs right here.
Yeah. So I have those animals because we've cleaned out the Freedom Breeder and it's ready for sale. We have those animals in the 41 quart tubs so that, they're just chilling until we get everything ready for them. Well, inherently, I post a video of Lucas being super cute and just bouncy. And he's in his 41 quart tub. And the top comment, "I don't understand why people keep in racks." And I'm like,
it's always going to be there. It's like,
oh my gosh, stop.
Yeah.
It's like, even if these animals are being housed in this rack 24/7, it's like, if I'm giving them hides, if I'm giving, if the animal is well cared for, like, this shouldn't be something that people are coming on and attacking other people for on posts and things like that. It really just doesn't bode well for us as an industry when, instead of wanting to learn about why we're doing something, we just immediately go and assume and attack over things.
Well, yeah, I think that not just reptiles, but you see that all over the world, right? If we don't agree, then I'm not gonna accept you as a person, which I think is something that, if that makes sense, if we differ in our views, then I'm gonna, no, I don't want to hear it.
Should we talk about me being banned out of that one group?
We need to talk about one thing I want to ask too, but in the wild, these have been found to be underground where there is really not much light and it's constant temp and they're in a small space. I mean, what are your thoughts on? I mean, that's how but these animals aren't really
right
in the wild, but that's how they are in the wild. So so there's that argument too.
In my opinion, more research needed. More research needed, because all of the stuff now, I'm going to be completely honest. It's not something that I dive into, you know, with all the articles and stuff all the time. I definitely have read stuff. I know there are some really great resources for these things, but we see videos, you know, like Dave Kaufman's, where I did enjoy that because it's just a differing aspect, and I like learning. But we see these videos, and I just don't really feel like they give the topic as much justice as it deserves. It seems more like cinematic as opposed to actually focusing on the science behind how these animals are living and thriving in the wild. We also have articles as well where people talk about, you know, the ball pythons climbing and being in trees. There's a lot of arguments with that, because people are like, well, you know, it was during the flooding season, so there's a lot of water on the ground, so inherently they're up higher. But if we look at ball python diet, we do see consistently across the board that they do eat birds in the wild. They eat avian prey in addition to, you know, rodents and stuff like that. So there is a lot more research that we need to do on these subjects in order to formulate hard opinions or hard facts, I should say, on these topics. Because right now, all we have is a very small collection of data, and then we have a very loud community of people who all think that their way of doing something is inherently right.
You get blocked, so you can go ahead. I'm gonna actually I think it'd be interesting. My science is my background, so of course I look up scientific studies, but this is one I'll send in the comments there. A journal that looked at ball pythons in a traditional rack setting versus an aquarium enclosure, and kind of mapped, or not aquarium, but terrarium, you know what I mean? Glass enclosure. Just kind of looks at their movement and everything. I thought it was pretty interesting, so I put in there. But yeah, you can go ahead on the Facebook groups and what your experience has been with that. Actually,
before that, did you read those articles?
Yeah, I read them beforehand. Yeah.
So what ended up happening with that? Because now I'm asking you the questions, but I want to know.
You have to put in the work and read it. So they found an obvious difference in the activity level of the ones that lived in the your traditional terrarium enclosure. They did find that they were more active, coming out of the hides more,
right,
using the tree branches a little bit more too. And then the other thing I found interesting was in the rack part, they did find that there were more pressure points seen where the snake would not, it didn't say like an actual wound or anything like that, but it was putting the snout and touching certain, they quote, barriers in the rack. So like the top, or, you know, sensing out. So I thought it was interesting.
Right. That is super interesting. Something that we can touch on is thermotaxation in these animals. So thermotaxation is when the animal is feeling a comfort by being touched on all sides. So we actually see that in the smaller tubs. And that's why these snakes do inherently, it's an aspect of why they have a difficult time hard transitioning from a smaller tub into a larger PVC setup, because they are so used to having this comfort aspect of them where they can touch all sides of the tub. And we do see this when breeders talk about, you know, oh, the animal's ready for a larger tub, and they put it in and they don't have that comfort on all sides of them. So then the breeder has to give them a hide or bring them back into the smaller tub. We do see that when hard transitioning these animals into large PVCs, because it is an inherently, you know, completely different thing than what they're used to. And because they're not used to using hides as that, they're used to using the entire enclosure as that. So we do get that level of disconnect with the animal where it just doesn't understand what's even happening to it. And that's where we do see the animals go off feed and stuff like that. So that's where we can talk later maybe about breeders possibly like using more like of the exoteric cave hides and stuff like that. If you have animals that you know are going to be more pet quality animals, utilize tools like this, like hides in the tubs, etc., to get them ready for that transition. So it's not just like you're dropping them from one thing into another. You're soft transitioning them, and they're at least used to that in some regard.
That's a really good idea. I'm actually going to do that myself with the animals I sell as pets. I'll put hides in there. Yeah.
It makes it a little bit easier for them for sure.
Yeah, then I think being on frozen thaw too helps.
Oh my God, please get them on frozen thaw. I won't buy a snake that's on live. I just can't, because the rat is so much, more intelligent than the snake.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother topic.
Like, it's frustrating.
Yeah. No, that's a whole nother topic too.
Yeah, like the rat, if you put a rat in a 4-foot enclosure, your dumb ball python isn't gonna find it. Like, it's having a struggle. So
yeah. No, I've seen one where I think the person forgot the rat was in there and the whole spine was exposed, and
oh yeah, it's not good. Yeah,
it came to me. They're like, "Can you save this?" I'm like, "No, I gotta euthanize that thing. I'm sorry."
Look, I love the ball pythons. Okay, I don't think that they're like stupid. They're just like they're like a few crayons short of a box sometimes, and like you put the rat in, and the snake's like, "Oh my God," and it's like trying to find it, and then the rat like hits it in the head, and it's like, "Oh Jesus!" Yeah. It's like you're like, "Oh my God, how are you even alive?"
No, it's crazy. Like, they just kind of turn their head, and they're like, a lot of mine are like scared, and I'm just like, "Come on, guys! Like, let's be real. Like, you're a predator. Okay, act like it."
You're an apex predator, Charles. Eat the rat. But they don't. So the frozen is really helpful for pet keepers. I'm going to tell you that right now. And it will help immensely with the transition from a smaller tub into a larger enclosure, because if the snake doesn't want to come out and strike the food, you can just leave the frozen food there and drop feed the snake, and eventually they'll get to a point where they will come out and they'll learn the routine. These animals, they are smart in the fact that they will learn routines, and they will get into stuff, and they know what you're doing with them. So but yeah, we can talk about the Facebook group.
Sure, yeah, let's go in. Yeah, so what happened with that?
The Facebook group. So this actually happened a while ago. It was a long time ago, like years. But I'm still harboring resentment. So harboring the resentment. So back when I had Exoterras, I had joined this group on Facebook, and a lot of people have heard of it. It's Not Just a Pet Rock, Python Regis. I think that group is a very good resource for people wanting to, transition their animals and put them in PVCs and stuff like that. Very good resource. But it's a gate-kept resource, which is something that is very unfortunate in the industry, because what actually happened is I bought our Freedom Breeders, the big 4-foot by 2-foot racks, and I had been in this group for quite a long time, posting with my Exoterras too, interestingly enough, which is, again, not the optimal way to house. And nor, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer in this, but if I were to choose, the most non-optimal way, it would be glass enclosures.
Yeah.
So I was in there, back in the yonder years, posting up. And I posted in 2020, I believe, when we got the Freedom Breeders, I posted the Freedom Breeder rack. And I was immediately banned out of the group. Immediately. It was like, boo, out you go.
Dialogue or nothing.
Yeah, and it was a shame, because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it was frustrating. It was not the banning out of the group that did it in, because I understand that in how they see it, that enclosure type does not meet or exceed the requirements that they feel a ball python needs with UV and stuff like that. So that is completely understandable. Fine. Have that opinion. That is a perspective. And for the most part, I actually do like what is promoted in that group for keeping. However, what that ended up doing was barring me from education. So it took away every piece of education that I had to utilize when I was actually looking to transition those animals into PVCs. So it was a real shame because I was over here like I have never used halogens before. So that was something that was new, and we did it with Focus Cubed. And we have a radiant heat panel on one side and we have a halogen on the other for heating. I was like very, very much like, you know, oh, where should we place the thermostat probes? Where should we do this? Where should we do that? None of these things, these resources were available to me because I had inherently been barred out of a group and the education had just been cut off. That is a huge detriment to the industry when these things happen, because then we have people like myself who inherently we want to learn. And even though I know a lot about ball python keeping, there will be a lot of people who disagree with the things that I say here, and that's okay. I think that we should always be elevating our knowledge in this hobby. I don't know everything about ball pythons. So to have educational resources taken away from me in that way, it's very unsettling. And I don't particularly like that because I think that it really creates a barrier to people actually being able to upgrade their enclosures and learn further about these animals if they wish to do so. Because, you know, there was never a point in time where I was like antagonistic in that group. It wasn't anything like that. It was literally me posting the rack and they didn't agree with that. So a real shame that went the way that it did, because that, not on a huge scale, but that was definitely a resource that I would have liked to have when going and getting these PVCs. But instead, I had made other friends through the industry. So I had made friends with, you know, like Liam at Reptiles and Research. I was like, awesome. You know, and he gave me quite a few pointers on things. I had made friends, you know, like with custom reptile enclosures. They're so great. The owner of custom reptile enclosures is so great. And they have amazing like rocks and all of these things that they sell for these enclosures. And that's what I love them for, is the decor. And I went there and I said, well, you know, like what decor will like suck up the heat the most from this, like, you know, halogen and things like that. All of these questions that I had. And if I wasn't as prevalent in the industry as what I am, I wouldn't have these resources, because most people aren't just going to reach out to all their friends, you know, like they're going to go to a bunch of different places and be like, oh, hey, answer this, answer that. It is nice when we have collective information, like in those Facebook groups, like Not Just a Pet Rock. And the only negative thing that I have to say is I wish that instead of immediately like banning people out of those places, there would be some level of understanding that people may be in a different spot one year, and then they might want to transition and keep working towards a higher elevated keeping goal the next year. That keeping is always a process, and we should never stagnate and be stuck in one particular way.
I agree. And I feel like I don't want to say majority, but a lot of the Facebook groups are like that. Like, it's kind of a Facebook thing.
Yes.
I mean, I remember I was so excited. I got my first lock or something. I was in a group and I posted it. I got just hammered. They're like, you shouldn't be breeding and you're just adding to the dead animals out there. And like, they didn't know the combo or anything like that. And so I kind of immediately just left the group type of thing. Didn't want to really succumb to that sort of mindset. I think
the
toxicity, and it's hard because you want to educate, but like, people have a wall, and no matter what you do, you're never gonna get through. Like, you know, force them. You don't. I mean, I also don't want to force people to think. You know what I'm saying?
Force them to do it.
How much collective dialogue? It's just kind of no. Just straight off, they don't want to have that open communication or dialogue.
Correct.
So I mean, you can give them opportunity to talk, but sometimes there is no talking, unfortunately.
Yeah, sometimes I find a lot, again, this is where I go back to people being inherently stuck in what they think is correct and not wanting to expand their horizons and see other perspectives. And I think I don't want to, I don't want to talk myself up here, but I do a good job of being able to align myself in the middle of both of these aspects of the industry, where I'm like, I see all of the benefits that the breeders provide, and then I also see all of the benefits that pet keepers provide, and how much they love their animals and just really want the best for those snakes. And that's why they're so passionate about keeping in like larger spaces and stuff like that. So more open-minded dialogue on both sides would be lovely.
Yeah, you can only hope. You only do so much, right? All you can do is be kind to other people, and we can be kind. That's how I kind of go about things, is not talking down people, just being open and just being kind to everybody is what you can do. So
that's exactly it. I mean, I have probably 40 to 50 plus messages a week with people wanting assistance with their snakes that they've bought. It comes with the territory of like having a larger, pet keeping channel. And I do actually try to take time out and answer every single one of those people back.
Wow.
I have, a full-time business that I run. And I do quite a few things in life. I'm quite busy, but I do try to make sure that I get back to every single person, because I want them to feel like there is someone in this industry that that does care about their concerns and wants to actually address those concerns with them. And I've created some very close like friendships and relationships with people where we've gone through and they've bought, a ball python, and they've set it up correctly. And then that snake, actually ends up getting organ failure or something. And that snake passes away. And I end up being the person that they call when they want to, talk about this stuff. And I've had people cry their eyes out on the phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite a bit, because, they just know from our interactions that I'm someone that they can really rely on in that regard. And that's something that makes me feel quite valued in the industry, if that makes sense.
No, that's fantastic. And I know it obviously takes a lot of time, but I commend you for that. That's amazing. With that, how did you get such big of a following? I mean, 90,000 followers is no joke. How did you build up that?
I'm sure that some of them are bots. I don't know. I'm like, look, so I've never paid for followers. I can firmly say that. And I've never paid to advertise my channel. So everything has been a natural occurrence. I've had quite a lot of videos that have got into like the 14.5 million views area. Yeah. There's actually one with the two snakes periscoping. So if you go down more, down more, keep going. Oh, you're not in the reels. Yeah, it's got to be just in the reels.
Oh,
yeah, if you go just to reels, it's just so much easier to scroll down more. So one sec. Like those ones right there, like 1.4 million on that one of Cookie.
Oh,
on the far right.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, and then there's actually one that's lower with the two oh, that one right there. There it is. Yeah, how much does that have on it? Like a shitload, probably.
4,500 likes, I see.
I think the view count on that was like in the mills, if I do say so.
I think it's 60.9 thousand.
9K. Okay.
Oh, there's one that we saw that one.
There's a couple million hitters in there. I know for sure that there's one around there with 14 million somewhere.
That's what I saw when I was wanting to get a ball python. I saw this and used this to persuade my significant other to get one. So.
And actually, interestingly enough, I don't edit out those videos too drastically. So the only thing that video has edited is the flower color, just to match her. But she is quite a lovely example of a firefly TSK xanthic, one that did not brown significantly. And that's why I always said I'm very particular about the animals that I buy. Because I really want them to be the best quality examples that they can possibly be. So those two xanthics are the two they're full sisters, so they came out of the same clutch. and they're both like incredibly beautiful animals. But yeah, how do I get that many views? It's following a lot of algorithm trends. So in my business full time, I actually run one of Canada's largest anime companies full time. Wow. Yeah, so we wholesale to all of like the larger game stores in the US and stuff as well, for like all their Pokemon plush and things like that. So social media marketing is something that I'm quite good at. And it's knowing how the algorithm's trending, but it's also creating that content that people just really enjoy seeing, because inherently snakes, I feel like for newcomers, snakes are kind of this a little bit of a frightening type of animal. It's an otherworldly animal that people inherently kind of look at and they're like, ooh, you know, I don't know how I feel about that because it's not fluffy and it's not a dog or a cat. My goal in showcasing these animals is to show off the majesty of them. I really want people to look at a ball python like Cookie and be like, wow, that's a beautiful animal. She looks so friendly and she looks very inviting. That's the biggest thing, is I want people to I want them to feel the same way that I did when I first saw, you know, the ball pythons on the Snack Hissing Booth group. I want people to look at the ball python and go, that is so cute. I want a ball python too. Because, you know, then we just sell more ball pythons and we all have ball pythons. So we're happy. Yes.
You get a ball python. You get a ball python.
Yeah, everyone gets a ball python, okay, and get some TSK Xanthics because they're really nice. That's all my favorite morph, so don't look at me. But yeah, so it's just a mix of doing stuff like that. I do educational videos sometimes on there, so I did a few. They're not good quality. I never claim to make good quality content. I just claim to make content that's nice. Mm-hmm. And if people enjoy the content that's nice, then awesome. And if, you know, they hate something, well, that's their prerogative. So, yeah, so for the educational stuff, I just have focused on, I do a lot of nidovirus education. That's something that I touched on in MJ's episode, because I work alongside Fishhead Labs. So I talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about the importance of thermostats with pet keepers. I'm like, please, for the love of God, get a good quality thermostat. Don't cheap out. You're going to want this because it's your animal's lifeline. So, you know, get a herpstat, get... what's another good? There's another really good one.
BE. I feel like I've heard various things. I mean, that's majority of what I have, and I've had pretty good. Inkbird is another one that I think is pretty good. It's a 1 pro, but people are getting multiple of them for racks, like having 1 per level on the rack. So, and I've used it for fish tanks. So that one I think is pretty reliable as well.
Inkbird I've never used, and I've only used the Exoterra thermostats, and then I've used the herpstat, because when I did research and I looked into, you know, what essentially was the top of the line, you know, thermostat to use, herpstat was across the board, like the first choice. So that's the one that we went with. I have like multiple herpstat 2 red lines, herpstat 1 red line, and then I have a herpstat 6 that I just put on the PVCs. Thank you to all Reptiles for that, by the way. They're an amazing store around Toronto. So, and I love them because they write me little notes when I do my orders, and they're like, say hi to Joob.
Oh, that's cute.
But yeah, herpstat, great thermostat. I always try to just give people things to learn off of. So the video doesn't have to be good quality, but as long as the message is getting across that it's like, hey, this is what you should be doing in order to have an animal that thrives and is happy and healthy.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I was looking through your pictures and they're really pretty. And that one, the Cookie, like I said, I do remember that one. I know
you want her now. See, TSK Xanthic, I'm telling you, girl.
Job, even though I do VPI, but it's okay.
That's the one. Oh, you're into VPI. Wow.
Yeah.
VPI. Wow, traitor. No, I'm just kidding. Traitor. No, you know what? Same with TSK Xanthic. There is a line of Xanthic that is great for everything. So VPI is amazing for those like deeper silvers and grays. I love it. But I would say actually the best pieds for the Xanthics are Mark Jane's, the MJ lightning pieds. And Mark is actually someone who's a personal friend as well. We've talked quite a bit at the expos and reached out to each other and stuff like that. So I love the MJ Xanthics.
Yeah,
like
cool. I agree.
The TSK Xanthics for the pieds. No, it's yellowy and it looks like crusty. I don't like it. I'm saying my piece on it. It doesn't look good. But the MJ Xanthic pieds, oh wow, are those stunning. Especially with Orange Dream. Have you seen them with Orange Dream?
I feel like I have. Yes.
They're so good. So go look up Mark Jane, because he's got some pictures on there and you're gonna shit yourself.
I'm gonna sell all my DPI stuff.
Yeah, you're gonna be like, wow, that looks really good. I want that now.
It's funny. It's funny. So we're coming up to an hour and a half. I do want to do sometimes for questions, but was there any sort of last topics that you feel like I didn't ask about, or I know I'm definitely gonna have to bring you back on because there's so much more to like talk, but I didn't know if there was any of like last minute topics you want to do, and then I'll probably open up for people in the chat to ask questions and we can answer those. So people, we can start thinking of questions, put them in there, and we'll get to them here in a minute.
Yeah. Ask me some weird stuff. No. Ask me more about spider ball pythons. Don't don't do it. Yeah, I think that there's so much to go off of with this topic of like breeders versus pet keepers. But at the end of the day, I don't really think that it should be a breeder versus pet keeper situation.
Yeah.
I really would like to see a collaboration on both sides of the industry with people coming together and really working collectively towards a better goal together for the animals. So I think that both sides of the coin are valid in the way that they keep. So breeders need to do things a certain way because they have quite a few animals, and it just inherently, it is what it is. There are things that breeders can improve on, like putting the hides in the tubs, or keeping in clear tubs, or perhaps transitioning to frozen thawed. These things are all things that that definitely make a huge difference in getting that animal ready for a pet keeper home. Pet keepers, I cannot stress this enough. You need to be doing your research on how to actually keep these animals. If you're wanting to put them in a larger environment, you can't just drop them in and be like, yippee-ki-yay, have a good one. It doesn't work that way. I would also highly recommend that pet keepers communicate. Instead of just looking at an animal and going, oh, wow, that's so pretty, I want it. You need to communicate and be asking the questions of, how is this animal actually going to serve the purpose that I want it to serve? Is the animal eating frozen thawed? Is this, what temperament does this animal have? Is it a shy snake? Is it, with the age of the animal? Well, what has it been housed in previously? Because if you're getting an adult that's been housed in a blackout tub, and then you're going to go and stick that animal in a 4-foot by 2-foot PVC, I would almost guarantee that 90% of the time that's going to go terribly for you, because you're hard transitioning it over and it's just not used to that. All of these things have to be taken into accountability when we're looking at the animals that we're wanting to purchase and what we're, looking at the snake for in terms of our own purposes to utilize them. So for me personally, I only buy snakes that are eating frozen thawed. I won't buy a snake that's eating live. I only really buy from smaller breeders because inherently they know the temperaments of the animals, and I need animals because we're using them for educational purposes. I need them to be solid. Like I don't want them, striking at someone or whatever. They need to have a good mind on them. And then also I need animals that really are not going to be a huge problem with the transition. I would love, I know Inked Lady Morphs, they are very strong believers in putting hides in with all of their snakes, stuff like that. And they have great success in selling to pet keepers because of this. And it's something that's, we've had discussions on like, oh, hey, what hide should we put in here? And, it's just random stuff that we talk about, but it does really make all the difference when they're looking to sell. And they get more pet keeper sales because of it.
It's fantastic. Yeah. I think that education on both sides, both from the pet keeper coming to the breeder, but also from the breeder side, thoroughly educating those pet buyers on where the animal is coming from, how it's being housed, and just being really upfront with everything, which just goes back to ethics as an individual being. So trying to find out those breeders who do those things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You need a breeder that aligns with your goals. So, and nothing against certain breeders that I've spoken with. I've had breeders where, I've been going to buy a snake and I ask them these questions and I ask for very specific videos of the snake, and they don't actually send me what I'm asking for. And when, I'm usually dropping like a good stack on some of these animals. So I'm like, I want to see what I need to see out of the snake. When the breeder shows no interest in doing that with me and they just disregard me and they're like, I think that a lot of breeders have, they get frustrated because they don't like the time wasters. So it's like, for anyone going and talking to breeders, please stop doing that unless you're actually ready to buy the snake. Like, no one wants to hear about how your grandma, died so you can't buy it now. Like, I don't care, oh, my wife, she doesn't want, I don't care. Just stop it. But like, these are things that we need to be looking at with the breeders that we're choosing. So if a breeder is not wanting to send me the things that I explicitly ask for, and they just really don't seem engaged in making that sale to a pet keeper, then why would I continue on with that breeder? Because it's obviously not a good fit. So then I just move on and I go to someone else. And by doing so, I've made quite a few amazing friends in this industry, especially, as I said, I keep calling out Cat and Row, but we literally do biannual vacations every year. Okay. So like there's a level of like, best friendship there that's very valued to me. Same with, Ball Brilliance, stuff like that. Matt is amazing. Will from Royal Canadian, Nicole from Canadian Regis. She's another one that's just like phenomenal. I love her. I can't tell you, like, the list is endless of how many amazing people are in this industry to get a snake from. So if you find a breeder that doesn't align with you, there's going to be a million other ones that do.
Awesome. Yeah, I like that too. Find whoever works best for you and for that personal connection. I like that quite a bit from buyers. That's what I like the most out of it.
Yeah, well, they can even go buy from you, but get some TSK Xanthics.
Oh, shame.
Oh, I feel like the Game of Thrones like shame bell, and I'm like walking behind you, and it's like shame with your VPIs.
Don't come to me for VPI. Love you, friend.
Oh, that's an inside joke because my husband's an accountant, and he's done so much accounting that we said that now we're gonna have to fly him to Pandora to do the rest of the accounting for the Navi. Oh. And we're also going to go to Disney and buy all those stupid Navi dolls. We're going to like where you go in the simulator and you get the Navi doll made in your likelihood, your image. Yeah, we're going to do that on our next biannual vacation.
Awesome. Sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look. I don't see any questions. Let's bring up some recent chats we've had.
Marcus is from a very close friend from the Final Fantasy group. So thank you so much for tuning in. And Marcus actually makes incredible video game music. Like look, Krista, okay, I know you aren't into the video games, but I need you to go listen. And with the sounds coming into your ear, then you're going to want to play the games. I guarantee
I go to his channel for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So he has a ton of amazing video game soundtracks that he actually creates. he creates all of the renditions himself. So
Okay, I'll listen to that.
Yeah.
Aurora, we need to do Siri to learn. Yeah, gaping awful. That's a bummer. Yeah, I think to you getting banned. Yeah. For sure. Elias, same. Aspirators should try and switch them to frozen thought they do for me, but if they don't, I'm switching them. Okay. That works.
sometimes it's hard though. I will.
Yeah,
It's
especially
really hard with adults.
yeah. Good luck.
It is a struggle unless that adult is just like a dumpster can. If you take an adult ball python that's like 5-6 years old and you throw it in a 4 foot by 2 foot, and then you also try to transition it onto frozen thawed, that animal is just overwhelmed. It's like a lot of like, look, I'm not going to say a lot of them won't, they will, but you will inherently see difficulties with that. If you know, in my experience.
Matt, I keep hides in my tubs and my snake love it. Yeah, I keep mine quite a few with tubs, and I think I'm actually going to start putting some like flake plants in there too. I am from the research side, where enrichment, animal welfare. I mean, that's my specialty as a vet. So I think adding kind of more enrichment items would help them overall. So something I'm kind of wanting to do more of.
Yeah, the enrichment is a huge thing for me. I think that providing hides and things to stimulate the animal mentally are so important. To me, I always, you know, we can't equate humans to ball pythons, but I always say keeping them in a barren tub, it really would be the same thing as me putting you in my bathroom upstairs, which is a really crappy bathroom, and you know, it doesn't have a window or anything, and you'd be big sad, and I'd put you in there, and I'd give you like a toilet, because obviously that would be the enclosure.
Kind of need that.
I would give you no other stimulation whatsoever. You can just, you know, I'll open the door whenever you need food and I'll give you the food, but other than that, you're going to be completely deprived of anything. And then what I'm going to do is actually leave you in there for a few years. And then I'm going to bring you downstairs and put you in my living room. And I'm going to put you in my living room with the couch and the TV. And I'm going to give you Nintendo Switch. And I'm going to give you all the fixins. Like, I'm going to make your habitat is going to be just peak. And you're going to be super confused about what is happening, because you're going to be like, whoa, I am extremely overstimulated right now. And that is how your ball pythons feel when you put them from the barren tub into the PVC that is enriched, and there's nothing in between. That's the best way that I can describe it. They are
makes sense.
Whoa.
I like the basement. Oh, somebody's got a question. Here we go. Have you had an experience with unknowledgeable vets? It's difficult to give advice when it contradicts what their vet is saying. Yeah, I think it's important to find a knowledgeable vet, and unfortunately,
not many of them are.
There's not many of them are, and I mean, I think in vet school I took an elective class for exotics, but if you didn't take that elective, I think you maybe got one lecture on all reptiles. So just imagine that, all the reptiles in one lecture. So. And I'm going to have a vet on, an exotics vet, actually in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that, because I think it would be really helpful to talk more about that. Yeah, one of my colleagues. So I think that'll be fun. But it's hard to find us out there. That's one thing. Maybe they are out there. If you go to American, or not America, I think it's ARA.
Just go to America. You'll find one. Just seriously. Okay, I kid you not. Canada, it's a sea of very non-knowledgeable vets, actually. Like, I have a snake right now with a bacterial infection in his mouth due to a tooth, and I actually provided the dosage information to the vet.
Oh my god!
It's like, okay, and they're like, do you know how to give the injection? They're like, because we don't really. And I'm like, I got it. It's fine. Like, oh no.
Dear Lord. No, I put the link in the chat. It's Association of Reptile and Amphibian Veterinarians. So that's kind of a locator to help find a knowledgeable vet near you. But yes, unfortunately, and that is very sad.
It's tough, because like even this, and there is a really good exotics vet there, but again, he's not in all the time. But him and I collaborate quite a bit. So we collaborate because I do a lot of education for University of Guelph here, because in partnership with Fishhead Labs and Fishhead Diagnostics out of University of Georgia, we actually work together to bring nidovirus testing to Canada for the snakes. So I work with vets quite closely here in terms of information and stuff like that. So there is an amazing vet where I take the snake. The problem is if he's not there, then I get the cat and dog vet. And the cat and dog vet, you know, some days I need a refill on, you know, the medication for the snake. I wanted him to have an additional 6 doses because I was like, I don't want this bacterial infection to come back in any capacity. So I'd rather give him a little bit more. So I was expecting to kind of have like some pushback or discussion on this. And the dog vet was just like, no problem. Gave me the wrong size syringe, the wrong dosage on half of it. Like, it was just like, oh my God. Okay. So,
I mean, and I think this is part of it too. Like, I think before you get these animals, it should be in your logic to have a vet already in mind to go to if there is a problem. So many people just kind of get the animal, and then when it gets sick and they get frustrated when they can't find a vet. I get people like move and things like that, but I do think that that should be a part of the planning process. If there is no vet that you can go to, then maybe shouldn't get that animal. I mean, that's as a vet, that is my, I mean, I see it all the time in dogs and cats. People will they'll adopt a puppy. Oh, I can't afford the vaccines, or I haven't talked to one. She's like, I can't afford to switch it to another diet. I'm like, then why did you make the cognitive choice to get that animal?
right.
So I think that's part of it. I get it. People get animals and their financial things change and it becomes hard to pay for it. That's a little different. But when you're kind of making that decision to get the animal, you should already have in mind of who you're going to go to for a vet.
So this is kind of the thing that jars me a little bit with payment plans. I'm like, because again, I don't sell snakes very often, but I have recently downsized a bit in my collection. I want to sell 1 more snake, and I want to get to 7 snakes. I feel like that's a really good number for me, and I'm happy with that. Because I do have like some health problems and things, so it's easier for me to maintain right now. But payment plans freak me out on like a $300 snake.
No.
So buddy, I'm like, you cannot afford, like, even on a $600 snake, I'm like, I was like, are you okay? Because I don't think financially you're okay.
Yeah.
And this isn't me judging their financial situation. This is actually me being concerned that if something goes wrong with the animal, that they will not be able to afford veterinary care, or they will not be able to afford the hides, or, you know, let's say a heat bulb burns out. Well, can you go afford, you know, the $30, $40 to get them a new one? Like, these are all things that I get concerned about, especially too, like, people need to understand, like, when we personally went through the nidovirus stuff, we were upwards of like $2,000, $3,000 to test our collection. Mm-hmm. And these are all snakes that are like, you know, at the time, like we didn't have many that were super expensive. So, you know, we're putting hundreds of dollars into snakes that are like $100 snakes. Mm-hmm. But guess what? At the end of the day, those are living animals, and they needed tested. And we did the due diligence because we love and we care for the snakes. So we put forth the money to do it. But I do know that there are people who would, you know, maybe cull the snakes, or, you know, just because they feel like, let's use Joob as an example, is a lesser entry really worth, you know, $500, $600 in tests or, you know, medication? A lot of people put a financial value on that, whereas we don't, because we, you know, our snakes are considered like family to us. So I don't really care if I have to drain out $10,000 for one of my snakes that's $100. I will go ahead and do that, to make sure that they have what they need. But people need to think about these things. It's not the initial cost of the animal that's going to be the largest detrimental factor financially. It is the upgrades, and like the PVCs that I bought, the best quality PVCs on the market, hands down. But that comes with a cost. Because you're getting something that's going to last you for the rest of your life, you sink out that cost in the beginning because it's top of the line.
This is you said Focus Cube, correct?
Focus Cubes.
Shout
Yeah,
out to Focus Cube.
they do all of our Ashley and Steven, amazing. Love you guys. All of our PVCs for us. And we freight them from Texas to Canada because you know what? I'd rather pay more for the quality. But all of these things, they factor in the hides. I don't know if anyone's ever bought like, you know, a Reptile shelter before. They're like these ceramic caves. They're like $80 Canadian for one cave.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of cost goes into having these animals and doing it correctly. And I think that more pet keepers need to factor that in.
Well said. Well said. I think I have another question. Laura, what's the weirdest thing you've seen while keeping snakes?
Oh God, don't ask me that. Oh God, I've seen some.
I've not, I mean, I've only been a year. I've not seen anything. The one vet consult I did where the rat, like the whole spine was poking out like that much. That was pretty weird. I mean, I know that rats could do that, but I was not expecting to that extent. Yeah.
I'm trying to think like how weird we want to go for this. I've seen some like really messed up shit. We'll keep it relatively tame. So I think the weirdest thing that I see across the board is just the amount of like really weird pet keeper setups that I see in my DMs. I have to tell you, like I remember Jessica from Hair Hollow Exotics. She runs the
I've heard of her. Yeah.
So we chat quite frequently. I love Jessica, my God, because her humor is so dry. And I will send her some photos of the enclosures, and I'm like, "Hey, babe," I'm like, "Check out what I got today," and she's like, "Whoa."
No, I also watch those YouTube where the pet tubers review like setups and stuff, and I get a kick out of that. So
yeah, oh my God, the setup videos send me off the rails.
Yeah,
like, it's just wild.
Not even reptiles, but like the hamster ones where they'll have it like in a castle or something.
The hamsters, dude. I've seen people who have hamsters and they have an entire room for these hamsters, and I'm like, damn, that is taking this hamster keeping to like an extreme. But I'm like,
your YouTube people are serious.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever, man. If your hamster, like that hamster has a better house than I do, so I'm like, if that is your like. I'm never going to talk down to people for wanting to do better for their animals, but I'm like, that's extravagant, man. Like you could rent that out in Toronto for like $2,000 a month.
So funny. Jose, what's going on? Yes, early. Yeah, you can watch the replay. We're just kind of finishing up. I don't see any more questions here, so I'll kind of leave any ending remarks here before we end for the night. So it was fantastic having you on. We had a great conversation. I already want you on for another round at some point. There's so much stuff to hit about this, but I think overall it's a really great conversation. I learned a lot. Hopefully our viewers learned a lot. So yeah. Thank
you so much. Hopefully I articulated everything okay. I've been on the phone on client calls for 6 hours today, and then I'm like, oh, I have the podcast. So
no, like, you did fantastic. I struggle with myself. It's in here, but it's hard for me to sometimes voice it out. So no.
Yeah, it was harder the first like couple podcasts that I did, and at this point I'm just like, all right, let's go. The most important thing is just that we had fun, and I had an amazing dialogue with you tonight. So thank you so much for having me and hosting me and allowing the topic to be discussed.
Yeah, of course. Still a lot to go, so we'll come back on and do another one and go from there. So I hope you have a good night. I'll hit you up after this. And yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. And I hope that you have a great night too. And to everyone in the comments, thank you so much to all my Final Fantasy peeps that know nothing about snakes. Thank you for showing up.
That's when you know you have good follower base.
That's when you know that you have literally the best friends.
Yeah.
Is when your people show up to support you. So that meant everything to me. So thank you guys. And then of course, like all of my friends from the reptile industry too. I appreciate your support over the last, however many years it's been. We're still going on this journey. So woot woot.
Anything else? I think people are just saying, oh yeah.
Oh, it's just Marcus talking about Metal Gear Solid because he loves that.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. Well, you have a lovely night, and we'll touch base. We can just kind of continue on after the show.
Yeah.
We'll close it off to the general public, and then we'll just keep going.
Sure. If you want to, you can stay around for talk for a few minutes. I'll put you in the backstage and
Yeah.
I'll be there soon. All right. All right. Bye, Caila.
Bye.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tapping in. Really meant a lot. Hopefully you got a lot out of this podcast, and thank you for coming with questions. Next week, we're going to have the Exotic Index come on. She is a new leopard gecko breeder who also has some ties to another leopard gecko breeder who franchises, so as a business model. So I think that'll be really interesting to talk about. She runs competitions too, and voting for the best gecko amongst breeders. So that's really fun. So tap in same time next week. And see ya.